I feel like polishing paint is like the most intimate way to get to know the car because you're paying attention to every single surface and curvature and everything, and I always enjoy it. And then obviously the result is amazing, and I've had a lot of people that are like, man, so like this car's been repainted, right? No, this is the original paint, 30 years old. It's never been a wreck. It's never been painted, anything. So that's extremely satisfying to me.
Hey guys, this is Nau and welcome back to the KodaCast. This podcast is a platform where we get to document our journey with Kodawari Collective, our passion project. On this podcast, it is my aim to kind of share our story and the stories of people we meet along the way. In doing so, we hope to inspire our listeners to cultivate a growth mindset and to build a life around their passion. Today's guest is Austin Granger. Austin has been a fan of, we connected through Instagram, and he's been a big supporter of our podcast. And, you know, he's definitely someone that I feel has the same values as us. And ever since we've been following your EF restoration build, Austin, that's when I knew we had to get you on the podcast. Just seeing the attention to detail that you put into that restoration project, and the fact that you even thought about us in terms of potentially becoming the next owner in that chapter in that story
Yeah,
was really cool. So welcome to the podcast, Austin.
thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. And no, I just when when I first saw you guys kind of popping up on Instagram, like I just started kind of just following along, and I was like, man, the stuff that these guys are doing, it just like speaks to me on like a different level because it just feels like the kind of stuff that like I want to be involved in, the kind of things that I enjoy seeing and doing, and everything you guys do is just, detailed and done the right way and done with passion, and I love that. So, yeah, it's easy to be a big fan of yours.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. It's crazy to for me, just looking back, it's still crazy to see how everything kind of started, and where it's grown and what and looking forward to the future, right? But just sitting down and having this conversation with you, like it gives me chills because this is kind of like what I envisioned when I started this. I'm like, man, I love cars. I love hanging around with friends and talking about cars with people that care about the same things and have the same values, and here we are, sitting
Right.
down, about to talk to cars, and I couldn't picture um, a better how to better spend my time, right, than to be doing this, and the fact that it actually um, works with the business and all that too. It's super cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, happy to have you on, man.
Yeah, it's totally awesome.
But yo, let's jump right into the EF build,
Okay.
right? I know you've had a very long list of cars and projects.
Yep.
Um,
You could say that.
that's been the most recent one. So, what was your mindset heading into that? Why did you decide to go with this? And do you want to just talk us through the process?
Yeah. So my dad actually mentioned to me, hey, I've got a friend. He's got this old Civic hatchback. Like I don't even really know what year it is or anything like that, but he's like he's had it for a long time, and he's got a two-car garage, and he wants to get rid of this so that he can buy a new car and keep everything in the garage. And he's like, you would you be interested in it? And I was like, yeah, we can go check it out. I don't know if like depends on what it is. I'm not really sure an old Civic is really my thing or not, but we'll see. And so we go over there and take a look at it, and I'm like, man, like this thing is, like it was dirty and it had been sitting, it wasn't running and stuff like that. But for the most part, like it was really well preserved, and I couldn't believe the fact that it was completely just original, hadn't been messed with. Because like really, like every Civic, man, like I guess you can thank Fast and Furious or something, but like they've all been riced and stuff like that, or they've been built into something really nice with like a nice B swap or a K swap or something like that. But this car was just like untouched, just looked like it needed to be cleaned up. And uh, so Mark, the original owner, we started talking, and he was like, "Yeah, I've got like all the documents for the car, the original warranty booklet, the brochure, the owner's manual, all that kind of stuff." And he bought the car brand new 3 days before my actual birthday in 1991. And I
Wow.
just knew, like, yeah, I got to buy this car. Like, this is awesome. And he really wanted the car to go to somebody that would do something with it. And so I just decided then, like, like this is just going to be a passion project. And like, I'm going to restore this car to as close to new as possible and preserve it in its original condition. Just because I just felt like it was the right thing to do for the car, and I hoped that people would appreciate it, and that I would eventually find somebody that would enjoy having something like that in their collection, or just to drive or whatever. Um, but yeah, it was a great project. It was a lot of fun. I trailered it back to the house, and I mean, I think my wife actually had to go out of town, and so that gave me plenty of time to start working on it. And so, I mean, I think I was in the garage for literally days, just working on it relentlessly. And so, it needed, it wouldn't start, so it ended up, it needed a new battery, but it also needed a fuel pump. And on those cars, you have to drop the tank. So drop the tank, put a new fuel pump in it, and I'm kind of like one of those. While you're in there, you might as well do everything kind of guys. So like I cleaned the tank, painted it, all that kind of stuff, put it all back together, and and then started just going through basic maintenance stuff, changing all the fluids, all the filters, the plugs, the wires, all that kind of stuff, and then once I kind of got it running and driving and stuff like that, like, it was so cool, man. Like, I was so excited the first time I drove it, and it just like it was amazing. It drove great, and for a 30-year-old car, I was just like, this is unbelievable. So once I kind of got it running and driving and stuff, I started working on the detailing side of it, which is what I really enjoy. I mean, I enjoy working on cars, mostly like modifying. The maintenance part of it is, it's okay. I don't know anybody that just loves maintenance.
Yeah.
And so I started the detailing and stuff, and it kind of started in the engine bay. And I kind of went down this rabbit hole of like, I want this thing to look brand new. So I started taking everything apart in the engine bay and cleaning it all individually in my shop sink and conditioning it. And then like, there was some stuff that like I wasn't satisfied with the way it looked. So if it was available new from Honda, I just ordered it. So like the battery tie down, it has like this kind of I don't know if it's like a plastic or like rubberized coating on it or something. And what happens is like that eventually like kind of chips, and then water gets under it, and then it like
Yeah.
rusts and starts bubbling. And so I was like, heck, I'm just gonna get a new one. It's available. Why not? Even like the little windshield washer cap, it was a little faded, and so I was like, well, let's just replace it. Um, you've seen the pictures. Like I think the engine bay turned out amazing. Like I mean, it looks new. Um, and then I kind of went from there and started, cleaning the undercarriage. I, you know, cleaned up the outside of the car, did a full paint correction, ceramic coating, cleaned up the inside, which really was pretty easy. The inside was really pretty clean anyway. Um, and then the hardest part was tracking down a seat cover, because the upholstery on the driver's seat, like the exterior bolster, had a little bit of wear, which is pretty common. Uh, but with that car being blue with blue interior, it was really hard to find that seat cover, and I was like hell bent. Like I'm this thing's gonna be perfect and it's gonna be original.
Yeah.
And I somehow tracked down a guy who was like, I've got a blue passenger seat. I'll pull the cover off and I'll send it to you. And so he did, and I, took the whole seat apart and recovered it with the cover that he sent me, and it looks great. And
Where did you find where did you find him? Where did you
so
find
I
this guy
started
with the
just
blue
like
seat?
going on Facebook and joining like all of these like EF Civic
Oh.
like pages and stuff, and just saying like posting pictures of the car because I figured like that'll get people's attention, and then saying like, hey, here's what I need, please help me out. Like let's find something, and eventually it worked, man. And so shout out to that guy. Like, thanks a lot. You really completed my project because without it, I was gonna lose my mind. Um, so, but so the car's done now. It turned out amazing. It's a 30-year-old car, so it's not 100% perfect, but it's as close as I could get. Probably my only real disappointment with the project, and I think I was actually listening to you on one of your podcasts. You were talking to the guy that owns Mita,
Yep.
and he was kind of talking about this. Like Honda is not great about supporting their legacy fleet, like their older models. They don't really keep making parts for them. And on the EFs, like it's really, really hard. A majority of the parts are in LA, and they some of them weren't the greatest quality to begin with, and so like the old stuff is mostly gone too. So like you're really just hoping that you can find either used parts that are in good condition somehow, or new old stock stuff. But that stuff, like, I mean, there's like little plastic pieces and stuff that people want $1,000 for. Um, so that was a little bit of a disappointment and a frustration to me. And so like, hopefully Honda's listening, and they're like, hey, we're going to start supporting our older vehicles, because I think these cars now they're becoming collector cars and enthusiast cars again. They've gone down all the way, and now they're on the rise. And I just think that it'd be worth looking at making some parts for them and stuff like that, so that these enthusiasts can have some support. Because there's brands like Porsche is really good about supporting their older models, and so maybe that's going to be a trend, because I know some other manufacturers are kind of starting to do that as well.
Yeah, I think as things kind of like car culture is just always evolving, and these communities are evolving, and the value and the demand for certain parts, certain generation chassis, it's changing, right? So I really do hope that brands and OEMs will kind of be open minded in, okay, you know what? Not all generations maybe require this kind of um, love and attention, but focus on the big communities that have like a lot of passion behind. So
Yeah,
whether it's the EF, whether it's the S2000, whether it's any chassis, right? But
yep,
actually be out there in the community and listen and be like, you know what? We have a lot of really cool technology, so it doesn't always have to um, it doesn't always have to fall on the hands of the OEMs and companies like Mita Motorsports and Mark. Like he's doing some really cool stuff, man. I 100% support companies and brands who are trying to do this for the community, because that's what we need. It needs to be all hands on deck. It can't just be from one side or the other. And you brought up some really good points, and I really hope that the moving forward as we head towards electrification, as we head towards um, the future, we don't forget about our past.
yeah. No, I
We
agree 100%. So, and one thing too that I think as it continues to evolve and grow is going to help enthusiasts with older cars and stuff where there maybe isn't support from like an OEM or from from like a big aftermarket company is 3D printing technology,
Oh yeah.
which I've already seen like a little bit on when I was looking at the Civic stuff. Like there's a guy, I think his name's like Greg or something, and he does like a bunch of 3D printed EF parts. And man, like that's awesome. And that's definitely a way where some of this stuff can go from being in LA to, hey, we'll just print you one up,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
That's
the
sorry, go
print
ahead.
quality's got to get a little better, um, and faster, and then obviously like the scalability of it. Um, but yeah, like that's definitely I think an avenue that's going to help big time.
Yeah, no, I think as the process improves, the technology improves, um, just having the ability to get these products and prototypes out and getting them manufactured in batch sizes that are, uh, you know, really
Economically
feasible for
feasible. Yeah,
people. Yeah,
yeah,
is really cool because you know you see a lot of influencers, you see a lot of brands now in our climate where they're like, you know what, we want to work with someone like a wheel company like Raise, where we have our following and we can do a limited batch of this, right? Taking that kind of model and then reapplying it to some maybe smaller piece on the headlight or inside the engine bay or something like that, right? Like that's um, it's really cool to think about what the possibilities could be when you kind of work with each other and the community continues to kind of grow together.
yeah, absolutely.
So did you talk to the owner about what his experiences was his experience was like just owning the Civic and having it for all these years?
Yeah, a little bit. So, I mean, obviously he'd owned the car for almost 30 years, and he's an engineer, so he's like very type A personality, and he loved driving the car. I think really like he's not necessarily like a big car guy, but he likes things that are mechanical and whatever. Like he's big into bicycles and stuff like that. And I think that he just thought like it was a cool car because the way that Honda built that car, like it was so simple, and they focused on all the things that like are actually important, and like didn't care about any of the things that aren't. Like it has amazing seats. It has like a really nice shift action. It has nice manual steering. It's very lightweight. But it's a basic car.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he enjoyed that about it, and also the fact that obviously it's extremely economical. Um, and yeah, he really loved the car, and I sent him some pictures and stuff of it actually finished, and he was just blown away. So I'm hoping before it goes off to a new home that he can find some time to come over and drive it and stuff, and you know
Oh man,
maybe
that's
enjoy
so
it once
cool.
more.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to kind of put those photos before and after of what you've done to that resto project. But I Sherry mentioned to me that you picked up the EF and then you tagged us and at the beginning of the project,
Yeah,
and I didn't really get to follow along until towards the end, and when she showed me you know the final result, I was friggin' blown away. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!"
it,
And yeah, what would you say was your like throughout the process? What's your whether it's the interior, the exterior, or is it the final kind of
so I just love like the whole process of like taking something that either needs to be restored or needs to be built or something like that. And just like I love the gratification I get from like I can see a direct correlation between my efforts and then the final result. Like I just love that. Like man, I took this thing and now it looks like this. And to me, that's just like the big thing. It's just like the overall gratification of like breathing new life into something like that. And really doing something with your own hands, with your skills, with your passion and knowledge, and yeah, it was fun. Particularly on the car, I think probably my favorite thing was probably either the engine bay, because I've never done anything like that. Like, it was a deep dive, and it turned out really, really awesome, and I was super happy with it. Or probably just, like polishing the paint and stuff, which is always fun. I feel like polishing paint is like the most intimate way to get to know the car, because you're paying attention to every single surface and curvature and everything, and I always enjoy it. And then obviously the result is amazing, and I've had a lot of people that are like, "Man, so like this car's been repainted, right?" Nah, this is the original paint, 30 years old. It's never been a wreck. It's never been painted, anything. So that's extremely satisfying to me.
Yeah. No, the more I hear it, Austin, the more I'm like, man, I think I have to come down and drive this thing, and that might be is that might seal it in. I'm
Yeah,
just gonna come back with an EF and shares and be like, what happened?
come on down. We'll put you up, man. I got plenty of room.
Oh yeah, no, it's so cool, because I've never really been someone to, I guess, leave things stock, but the more and more I learn about car culture, the more and more I learn about Honda and hearing the stories and listening and seeing things from different perspectives, seeing a car like that really captures like the mindset that Honda had back then. Their story of how they were trying to get a foothold in the North American market, and how they were trying to execute that with an economy car for the masses, right? But still make it enjoyable to drive and still make it an experience that people remember and value.
Absolutely, man. And I think like that's kind of really like when Honda really had like the magic going. It was kind of back in those days. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not generally one to leave a car stock either. I enjoy modifying cars because it's a creative outlet, right? Like I can personalize the car to my tastes and make it my own. But I just felt on this car, I felt very strongly that like I want this car to be the way that the designers and the manufacturer intended it to be when it was new, and so that's what I did. And like I still think it'd be cool to, like, if I was going to keep it, I would probably throw some coilovers on it and some wheels, but keep it like kind of period correct. Like find
Yeah,
some really cool, like 14-inch Mugen wheels or something like that,
yeah,
because that stuff's easily reversible. Like you can take off coilovers and wheels in a couple hours. So
yeah,
I don't think it like ruins the car or damages the character of it.
yeah. Just modifying it like just right in the right areas, just to kind of like accentuate what's there, right? And that's the beautiful part of getting into these builds and modifying, is that you have like a cool foundation, and then you're like, what, I can just tweak the suspension here, um, do this, add wheels, make sure that it's from this correct period, and it's almost like you're traveling back in time. You're almost like, man, this is, if I was a car enthusiast back when this car was released, then this is how the car might have looked.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean that's it. Yeah. And I have a very like, and I think you do too, because I really love like what you've done with your NSX and like the EK and or I'm not the EK. Well, what I can't remember what the chassis code is for the CTR.
Oh, the FK8.
FK8. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need an EK, but
Oh yeah. No, we
uh
we have we have an EM1 shell
oh, okay.
that is kind of on the back burner right now. It's sitting underneath the tarp at my sister's country home. But it was my first Civic. So like we're saving that for later, and revisiting that build, because that's the car that started it all, and we want to give it the proper time and attention. So with the amount of
Absolutely.
projects and things going on right now, we're just like, you know what, let's hold off and revisit that when we have the when we're in the right headspace.
Yeah, you gotta do that one right. That car deserves it, and that's so cool that you've still got your first car. I wish I still had mine.
Yeah, no, it's not the same chassis, but it's the same generation.
Oh,
So
okay.
like
Yeah.
my first car, although the floor started rotting out, and we made our we said our goodbyes last year, but our neighbor right next to Kodawari, he had an EM1 chassis that was super clean, and he put a lot of love into it, and he's like, I just want to see it go to a good home, which is like a very common theme. These cars, they have so much emotional significance to our lives. So seeing it go to someone who can really take care of it and appreciate uh, the what the car means to us is, I think, a very common theme.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've actually like during I've had a few offers on the EF, and I just like didn't get like the right feeling from the guy, and I was just like, yeah, no, I want this car to go to the right place.
All right, man. Just I'm pretty sure at the end of this conversation, we'll have to strike up something. It's gonna give me an excuse to go, visit Alabama for the first time. But let's rewind this. Let's rewind this to the beginning, man. Your first car is definitely something that not most people would expect, but can you share where this passion for cars started and the people that influenced it along the way?
Yeah, so probably I mean honestly, like as early as I can remember, I've always loved cars, and I mean my number one influence for that would definitely be my dad. He's a mechanical engineer. He's worked for NASA for 30 plus years, and he's always loved cars. Even like as a teenager, his first car was a yellow Celica GT with a 22R swap in it, and and he wishes that he still had that car. So if anybody has one of those out there, give me a call. And so yeah, and so probably the car that kind of started it all for me was my dad's 1978 Porsche 928. Um, it's black, five-speed car. It has kind of a rare blue and white Pasha interior. Um, and yeah, just kind of a unique car. It was actually purchased new by a Marine over in Germany, and then imported back to the U.S. And then when my dad graduated college in '86, he bought the car, and he's had it ever since. And so I just remember, like as a kid, riding around in that car and just thinking, like, man, this is the coolest car on earth. And in my head, it was the fastest car on earth. Like, whatever. It was just so cool to me. And that car just holds like a super special place in my heart, and really is what stoked the fires of like getting me into cars like seriously. And and I always wanted a 928. So for my first car, I couldn't quite afford a 928, but my parents were like, "Hey, go get a job, save up some money, and like whatever you make, we'll match it, and we'll help you buy a car."
What were
And
928s going for back then? Do you
so
remember?
back then, they were probably in like for like a good one, in the 12,000 ish dollar range. The problem is they're expensive to maintain, and they're not exactly the most reliable cars. And so you could buy a cheap one, but I probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere. Um, so my dad kind of convinced me, like, well, what about like a 944? And I was like, yeah, those are cool. It's not a 928, but it's cool. And so then we kind of started looking at like the 944 turbo models, and I got lucky and kind of found one for a good deal over in Atlanta. Drove over, and it was guards red, black interior, turbo car, and I wasn't even 16 yet. I was like a few weeks away, and so and I also didn't know how to drive a stick shift yet. And so my dad test drives the car, and I'm like riding with him in it, and this is like one of those early turbo cars where the thing has turbo lag for days, but when the boost hits, it throws you back in the seat, and it's like a roller coaster ride. And I was like, this thing is awesome. I've got to have it. So we bought the car. We brought it home, and I remember I finally turned 16, and we go out, and he's like, all right, so you got to learn how to drive stick, and that's probably not the easiest car to learn on. And we go over to this kind of like industrial park where there's not, on like a Sunday, there's like nobody out there, and we're like trying to drive around, and I mean, my God, I was like almost in tears. Like I can't drive this car. I can't do it, you know? And so we go home, and my dad's friend lets us borrow his Ford Ranger with a 5 speed. And I learned on that, and then started driving the 944, and, finally got it. And man, I just love that car. And so then I kept working because I was like, well, I got stuff I want to do to this car, So the paint was really nice. The front seats kind of needed some attention, and I just wanted to do like some performance stuff to it and whatever. So we started. We put some racing seats in it, and we put some nice Carrera 3 wheels, like 18 by 10, off of 911 on it, and an American International Racing front splitter. Front, like, they have like a little nose panel that kind of covers the intercooler, and they made like this panel that has these two vents that, like, directs air straight into the intercooler. Put a bigger intercooler, um, a bunch of Lindsay Racing stuff. Like, those are back when you like use chips, which is not a thing anymore. Um, Upgraded the mass airflow, exhaust, some of that kind of stuff. And man, that car was so much fun. And as a 16-year-old driving around in that car, like, all my friends thought, like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. And it
Must have been
was
quite an amazing feeling.
it was, and most of my parents' friends, I'm pretty sure, thought they were insane for letting me have a car like that. But you know, I was fairly responsible, and I did, not to say I didn't do any stupid crap, but I'm still here. Um, but yeah, so then that car kind of like really is what, like, you know, that was my car to do what I wanted, and that's what got me really into like modifying cars and stuff like that. I guess that, and then also on the 928, at some point the head gasket blew on the original 4.5 liter V8, and
So sorry, I'm not really like fluent with this generation of Porsche vehicles.
yeah,
So what year was your dad's nine? Or what year was your dad's 928?
yeah,
And what
yeah,
year was your 944?
yeah. So the 928 was a 1978. So Porsche made that car from 77 to 95, and they had
77, 95. Okay.
yeah. So they had like the original 928, and then they had a 928S, a 928 S4, a 928 GT, and a 928 GTS.
Is the motor front engine or is
Yep,
it rear?
it's front engine. So it's
Okay.
front engine, water cooled, rear transaxle, and it has something called a Y-sock axle, where the rear axle actually has, I guess, some freedom of movement. I don't know exactly how it works, but basically, like, when you go around the corner, it's almost like passive rear steering. So it's a pretty interesting car. Like, when Porsche designed that car, they basically thought like that it was going to be a successor to the 911, and that it was going to be the car to take them into the future. And it was there. It was I'm pretty sure in '78 it was like the most expensive car in the world, and then in '86 it set the world land speed record for a production car on the Bonneville Salt Flats. I think it was like I don't remember, like 160 something miles an hour or something like that.
And there's a V8.
It's a,
They,
yeah, a
they,
V8. So the first cars were 4.5 liter V8s, and then I think they grew to like a 5 liter, and then I think by the time the GTS, like at the very end, it was like a 5.4 liter quad cam monster. Yeah.
so what was in your 944?
Yeah, so the 944 actually is an interesting car because it shares a little bit of DNA with the 928 because it's also front engine, water cooled, rear transaxle. Um, but that motor is literally half of a 928 S4 motor. Um, and so and then they put a turbo on it. Uh, and yeah, that's a fun little car. But that car was an '87. So the 944s came out in '83, and then they facelifted them in '86 and came out with the turbo model as well. And then they built those until I think '91 maybe.
So was it a four cylinder or what, or just the displacement was cut in half when you mentioned that it
It's
was half
literally
half?
half. So
Yeah,
it's a 4 cylinder 2.5 liter. So it's legitimately half of a 928 S4 engine.
yeah,
Yep. So
that's so cool.
yeah, they had to do some funky stuff with like the harmonic balancer to get it to work properly. So actually, Porsche hired Mitsubishi to design this like crazy harmonic balancer assembly to get the thing to balance right.
So what does a harmonic balancer do to a car or for a car?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. That's like too far into the engineering weeds for me,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just know that like I guess because it's half of an engine, they had some issues getting it to balance, and so yeah, that I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that they actually went and hired Mitsubishi.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting to see how like these OEMs reach out to each other to kind of solve like certain issues.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I feel like people think that they're all like enemies and stuff, but at the end of the day, they're like, they're competitors, but
Yeah,
kind of a family at the same time.
yeah. That's super cool. I've begun to kind of start like I've begun to learn that as we've built Kodawari and just looking at it from that lens and looking at it from like a community perspective. Like we're competitors, we may be rivals, but at the same time we're still in the automotive industry and we still have a love for cars. So you have that shared camaraderie, that connection.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. Um,
But man, being 16, being in a car like that, at that point in every guy's life, you're you're kind of like coming into your own. Your friends are everything, and to be driving around a car like that, that must have been that. And those are the memories, and those are the times in our lives that have, I think, really put that extra layer of attachment to these cars and what they mean to us. Because we think back, like, man, you just felt like you were invincible when you were in a car like that with your friends, or
yeah,
you know
yeah, yeah. Right. You were Superman, and yeah, the nostalgia of it is just, I think, incredibly powerful and part of what drives people's passion for cars, and then probably particularly like older cars that were maybe like super cool when they were a kid. Uh, and like maybe to some people now they see it and they're like, I don't understand, but to us, like it's like, man, that was the coolest car ever.
yeah, I've never really been someone that's really into psychology growing up, but over time it's definitely been an area that I've been very curious about. I've been very curious as to kind of hear and find out people's stories of why these cars mean so much, because cars mean a lot to me, and I'm trying to put make those connections as to why these older cars are now becoming so important, and why, just as car enthusiasts, why these cars mean so much, and all that. So yeah, just listening to your story alone is definitely um, you know opening my eyes as to what it means, and why these cars are so, yeah, so important.
Yeah, yeah,
But growing up with your dad being a big influence on your journey and your passion for cars, how was he at home with sharing that passion with you? Was he kind of like, hey Austin, come into the garage, look, come give me a hand, or was he kind of just doing his own thing and you kind of just gravitated towards that?
yeah. So he was generally pretty good about like including me in coming out to the garage with him and like helping him with stuff, and you know, some of it was, damn it, hold the flashlight still, or or whatever. But I was still out there spending time with my dad, and that was the most important part. But also, fueling my passion for cars, learning, and it just was a great time. So and then at some point on the 928, we ended up doing an LT1 swap into the car with a Chevrolet V8, uh, because the head gasket blew, and the 4.5 V8 was pretty expensive to work on and really not super powerful. And so my dad and I kind of worked on that together with one of his friends, and so yeah,
How did the car drive after the swap?
yeah, pretty cool. I mean, it's got I don't know, 100 more horsepower than it originally did, probably. So it's not like super fast by today's standards, but it's pretty fast. It sounds awesome, and it's just fun to drive and just to see the car back on the road. And really, right now, it's been sitting for a couple years, while we were like working on building our house and stuff like that. And I think I'm gonna have to go in and maybe put a fuel pump in it and stuff, so it's not running right now and covered in dust, like probably 10 inches of dust. So that's gonna be one of the projects you'll see here soon, is starting to get back into that car and bringing it up to my standard, because my dad took pretty good care of it, but he's not as obsessive as I am about like uh, detailing and like that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, that'll be a fun little project.
What do you have, besides like restoring it, detailing, and getting it up to back 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 running? What plans do you have to potentially take that build?
Yeah, so one thing I'd really like to do is big brakes. So the early cars kind of just had like really pretty pedestrian brakes on them. So I want to do like a 928 S4, or uh, if I could afford to, maybe a GTS brake swap. Because those came with like the bigger Brembo calipers, bigger rotors, whatever. Um, it's already got a pretty decent suspension on it. It's got, I think, Bilstein's, um, and those cars were actually like basically coilovers from the factory. You can adjust the height from the factory, which is kind of cool. Um, and it's already got some nice wheels and stuff like that. But so I kind of want to do like something cool with the interior. The front seats are starting to get a little worn. So it's got the original Pasha interior, and I'd like to keep that, but I kind of want to elevate that a little bit. So I'd like to do like a sport seat conversion with the larger side bolsters, but then still like upholster the center in the Pasha material. And then maybe put like a nice like personal or like Momo steering wheel or something like that in there that kind of looks period correct. Like I think Singer uses like the Momo Prototipo a lot. So maybe something like that. And And then ultimately, something I'd really like to do on the car is you can actually swap T56 transaxles out of like C5 Z06s into the car and make it a 6 speed. Um, because that that car, the gearing is like really long because the 928s were really made as like these Autobahn cruisers, you know. So they're made for like traveling at 140 miles an hour all day. And so with the T56, you still obviously keep like a nice long overdrive gear, but with it has more gears. So like the gearing is spaced shorter, and the final drive ratio for the differential part of it is lower, and so a lot more acceleration and stuff like that without having to sacrifice any cruising comfort or efficiency. So that's something I'd like to do, but that's kind of a big project.
Yeah, I know that would be really cool because I know exactly where you're coming from because even with the NSX, the early generation, the gearing was really long. And we both love driver's cars, and part of driving enjoyment is shifting and enjoying and revving up the motors. So
Yeah,
having the best of both worlds, where you have that overdrive gear, you have the ability and the need to shift and ring out the motors, it's key. So I yeah, that would be a lot of fun to kind of take something like that and really adding that detail, that small detail, that would really make a huge difference.
yeah, I think so. So on the NSX, like, is that something that you can easily do? They have like shorter gear ratio transaxles because those are transaxle cars, right? Because it's mid-engine.
I believe so. Like in terms of like the technical specs of the car, like I'm still learning so much about it.
Okay,
It's been pretty wonderful, and but I don't know all like the technical terms of if it's a transaxle versus something else. But we are in the process of putting in like a shorter gear set.
nice.
So you can actually get the Type R gear set that they put in the Type Rs, and swap it in. So the entire gear set and the final drive, um, that's what the NSX is actually at my good friend Rob's house right now, and he's doing it for me. So
Awesome.
I ever since I have had the car, I've thoroughly enjoyed driving it. I It's one of those cars that I explain it to people who ask. I crave driving it. You know, when Sherry asks me to go get a glass of like some milk for Anderson, I'll run to the shop just so I can jump in the NSX and then drive to like Walmart and pick up milk, or the grocery store. But the gearing is long. The gearing is long, and when I found out that I could swap out all the internals and get you know uh, adjusted ratios so that it's more fun, I was so excited for that. So yeah, where the gear set is being put in right now. I was gonna go the whole shebang and do the final drive as well, because my friend Billy, who owns the Type R, and he did the same mod, said that it transforms the car. But I know he drives his car very sparingly, and he enjoys the track and stuff like that too. And for me, the NSX, like I drive it everywhere, every chance I can
Right.
get on the highways. So I wanted to see what the ratios were like without the final drive. So we have just the shorter gear set in. I left out the final drive for now, and then I'm gonna kind of see how I like that, driving on the highway and kind of driving it around the city. But um, Mark from Media Motorsports also just prototyped a short shifter, for so the Type R's had a short shifter built in
Okay.
to the car, but it was only for right hand drive vehicles. So you couldn't buy that short shifter and swap it into your left hand drive NSX.
Okay.
So him and his team actually recently made a prototype for the exact same short shifter, but made for a left hand drive NSX. So we're gonna be swapping in that short shifter along with the short gears, and yeah, man, I'm super excited. I can't wait to get the car back and to really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're gonna love it. I can't wait to see what you think about it when you drive it.
Yeah, it's that car where the driving experience just it just puts a huge smile on my face, and I'm like, man, it's already so much fun, so I can't even imagine how much more fun it's gonna be, and it just gets me so amped up for like this whole project as a whole, because I plan on really doing a lot, and making this kind of like a canvas for my creative outlet, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it can and it I think the car embodies what Kodawari represents very well.
Yeah, the direction of the build and kind of how I was raised. You know, my parents are very humble, very modest, right? And I think that has an influence on how I modify my cars. I know the car is it's a red NSX, and it's pretty that color is pretty, you know, pretty shouty, and the shape of it, the silhouette of the NSX is very timeless and very attractive. But I think how I've always enjoyed building the cars is just accentuating the car where it needs to be accentuated, not being too in your face, but just a really timeless build where it can be appreciated regardless of what age or what generation that you're from.
Yeah, no, I agree. I kind of gravitate towards like a maybe an OEM plus kind of look. I always kind of think about like if the designers and the engineers that were building this car were not handcuffed by the business department and the marketing department, like what would they have done?
Hmm.
You know, and that's kind of like where I try to go with it. Is like is like the best version of the car that maybe could have been built.
Yeah, I never actually thought of it like that, but that's really cool. Yeah, because we don't know the shackles or the guidelines or the limitations that these engineers had put on them, right?
Yeah,
But can you imagine, like they must have, well, you look at the end product and you're like, there's no way there wasn't passion. There was so much passion in the whole team. You know, it took so many, like an almost sometimes an army of people to kind of create these cars. So, can you imagine what it would be, what the car would be like if they, you know, had a little bit more resources, or they had a little bit more flexibility? And that's a really cool way to think about it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. That's just the way I always try to kind of envision it. So, um, uh, and I feel like it makes for a good car that's not overly extreme in any way. You know, it's well balanced.
Yeah.
Uh, and you know, there's some extreme cars out there that are really cool, and I appreciate them. They're just not for me.
No, that's a really cool way to put it. Um, so growing up, when you were in the garage with your dad, what was like, you know, to be a mechanical engineer at NASA? I can imagine like details matter. You know, attention to detail, your process, your workspace, that stuff is really important. Um, what was your dad's kind of garage like, and did that have an influence on how you um, have
So
grown into like a detailer, and like how your space is set up right now?
I think in some ways it did, but not in the way you would expect. So my dad is very detail oriented when it comes to like he's gonna do things the right way and over engineer everything, almost to the point where like growing up I would get frustrated and be like, we could just do this and just be done with it. But he'd be like, no, because that's not the right way to do it. And so that definitely influenced me in a great way. But he's kind of a little bit messy in the garage, and so I don't like that, and it like makes me feel out of control and like just like chaotic, and I can't kind of get like my thoughts together, and so I think that influenced me to like when I got my own space, it was like, okay, it's gonna be neat, it's gonna be clean, it's gonna be organized, and it's gonna kind of have like this like I don't know, like zen, if you will. where like when I go in there, I feel at peace.
Yeah, no, that it's funny how like like our parents have an influence on us, but sometimes in a different way than you would think, right? Um, Organization and cleanliness is something that I've almost recently like rediscovered because I I had an opportunity to kind of talk to my dad, and he's kind of, you know, we've our relationship, we've never really worked on cars a lot together, but he growing up he would always remind me of how I love to organize things and how neat I was when I was a little kid. And it's easy to kind of look at Kodawari in our shop and think like, oh man, like they're super clean, super organized, but that's not always the case. Our house at home is a bit of a shit show, and just the hustle bustle of life sometimes has pushed me away from how I the values I really had, and something that I gravitated to very naturally growing up. And my dad was the one to kind of remind me. He's like, yeah, when you were little, like when you were at Anderson's age right now, and Anderson's 3, he's like, you used to take shoes and you always would line them neatly without me ever asking mom, your mom or me asking you to do it. You would always line up the shoes. He's like, that was just something that you did, and you always put so much focus into cleaning and organizing, and um, yeah, I kind of tried to remind myself that this is some part of me, and I should kind of like dig in and really focus on these things that are a part of me.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I feel like organization and stuff too is it's a never ending battle, you know. It- and it's easy to go to the wayside like when you get busy and stuff like that. But and like sometimes my garage gets a mess. I mean, right now it's a complete disaster. But every time that happens, I start to get this feeling of like, oh man, I can't function in here, and like it makes me stressed to go out there and not happy. And then I clean it all up and I organize it, and it reminds me of like, hey, this is why you got to keep it this way, and this is you know uh, why it's important. And it is important to keep your space clean and tidy and organized. And it really goes a long way too, I think, in increasing like efficiency. You can waste a lot of time with in a workspace if it's cluttered and disorganized and chaotic.
Yeah, no, I've definitely come to learn recently how important it is to kind of set your environment, right? Even with the podcast today, we knew we were doing it at home, and the rest of our house is kind of under renovation mode, and it's a little bit cluttered. And she's like, oh, Sherry was like, you could maybe even do it in the basement, but I know that for me to be in the right mindset and headspace, our bedroom right now, because our good friends surprised us with a whole renovation project, and they decorated and cleaned it for us while we were on vacation. And now it's just like it's a space that brings me so much joy. And like I start my day with making my bed. I start my day with organizing the pillows, and it's something that I've never done before. But now it's such a great routine, and it's such a great way to start and end my day. And I was like, you know what? I want to do my podcast with Austin in the bedroom, and this is where we're situated right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean it makes total sense. You want to be somewhere where like you enjoy being, you know.
Yeah. Okay, Austin, we're gonna jump into a quick break, and
Yep,
we'll be
sounds
right
good.
back. All right, and we're back from the break. Austin, when we left off, we were kind of talking about workspaces and organization.
Yeah.
But do you remember when you started getting into detailing and the process of taking something dirty and working your magic on it?
Yeah. So I think that mostly started As a kid, I always kind of wanted to like help my parents, like whenever they were gonna like wash the car or whatever. I have no idea why, but I thought it was fun. So I always wanted to kind of help. But then, obviously, when I got my own car, I think that's really what started that because you get a car and you want to keep it clean. You want it to look good. You want it to, you know, when you get it, it's like this shiny new thing. Even if it's not new, it's this shiny new thing to you, and you like want to keep it that way. Or if it's not, then you want to get it that way. And so, yeah, I kind of started on my own car, and I started probably the same way most people do, just going down to like AutoZone or whatever, and buying whatever they had. And then, kind of as it evolved, I realized like there's better stuff out there. And as I kind of started like getting online and reading, because usually when I get interested in something, I kind of like dive into this rabbit hole. Uh, and so I kind of started reading and um, doing a lot of research and just trying to figure out like, okay, what's the best way to do this? How can I improve my process, my techniques, and like just get better results? And so I kind of started getting onto like, I think back in the day, like Auto Geek was like a online detailing forum, and I think it still is. Um, and Autopia, I think, might have been one. And you would get on there, and then you would see these guys like Todd Cooper and like different guys like that who I think really influenced me to become like a really the best that I can be at detailing. And so you would see them on there, and they would be reviewing products or writing up like processes and stuff like that. And so I kind of started going down that rabbit hole and ordering stuff online. And I bought a Porter Cable 7424 XP, which was like, the stuff back then. And, started messing around with like polishing cars and stuff like that. And then, kind of as I started to do that, and sort of as I started like modifying cars and stuff, my parents will tell you like every single day after school on the weekends, like our driveway looked like a car dealership. I mean, there was like people lined up all up and down the driveway. We were like tinting tail lights or painting somebody's like brake calipers or like washing cars or whatever it was we were doing, installing a stereo. um, and it just kind of grew from there. And then I would have people like my parents' friends or like some of my friends who would be like, "Hey, can you do that for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, So I kind of started, detailing a little bit to make a little extra money, and now I've kind of gotten to a point where I have a nice workspace and stuff, and so I've kind of like gotten back into not only doing my own cars, but starting to do some stuff for other people as I have time, and that's been really fun. And I love. I think what gives me the most satisfaction about it is like I really enjoy the process, obviously, but I love when somebody comes to get their car and they see it for the first time and they're just like, "Wow, this looks so good! Like it looks new, or better than new sometimes."
Yeah.
And they're just like, I can't believe this," and that just makes me so happy.
Yeah. No, that unveil of and knowing that you were like the one who orchestrated and figured it all out. I think that's one of the really sweet parts of being a detailer. You mentioned you picked up that Porter Cable polisher, right? Was that just a rotary polisher back then? Because
Oh,
most
so that was actually like really the beginnings of dual action polisher. So it was a dual action, but it had a really small throw. I mean, I don't even know like what the throw on those things is. Like maybe like 8 millimeters or something. It's tiny. So the orbit was really small. They're not super powerful. So like the limits of what you could correct and how long it would take you were a lot lower then than they are now. And you did have to really get into like a rotary to get into like deep correction kind of stuff. Where now, we have these awesome long throw polishers like Rupes and stuff like that, where the sky's the limit. I mean, they can do almost anything. Um, and so, and I did have also a Porter cable. Uh, um, the word has just escaped me.
Porter cable, like a rotary
Rotary
port.
polisher.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I did have a Porter cable rotary polisher, and I use that some, but I don't know. I find it uncomfortable to use because because of the way that it's driven. It's like it feels like it's pulling you across the panel, and I don't really like that. Plus, there's just the risk of like burning through paint, that kind of stuff, where you don't really have that risk with a dual action polisher.
yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how the community was back then. Being on the forums, that was always the go-to place, and to to have guys kind of share their journey and share their process. It's so key to kind of really inspiring others to kind of chase after and improve their craft too. Because if I'm gonna be honest, like I always enjoyed detailing the car growing up, but from when I started my journey with actually owning my own cars and modifying it, like I didn't put a lot of time and energy into keeping the car clean or correcting the paint. And it wasn't until I landed on Matt's YouTube channel and him teaching his process and him sharing his journey and his passion and breaking it down and really building that community did I was I really inspired to, like, you know what, I love modifying cars, but I didn't know how I could maintain or preserve the paint. And now he's showing me exactly what tool to buy, what his process is, and how to, take a little bit of that fear away of burning through paint and all that. So the community aspect of the forums back in the day now evolving into like a YouTube platform, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely, and it takes it to a different level too because you can actually physically see with your own eyes the actual process and what they're doing, and they can talk you through it kind of like real time, and that gives you a whole nother level of like comfort and confidence that you can go and apply this to your own car. And then guys like Matt who like there's so many products and there's so many people who have different processes and all this kind of stuff, and like the thing I love about Matt is he like goes through and he like cuts through all the crap and he just gets it down to like, here's what you need, here's what you don't need, and like, and here's the way I do it. You don't have to do it this way, but if you do it this way, it's probably going to work. And I like that, man. Like, and I think that makes it accessible to a whole different group of people who probably wouldn't have gone out on a limb and tried this kind of stuff before.
Yeah, because I think it allows for us to kind of, because the best part about Matt is that he also shares like who he is as a person, what he struggles with, and his journey.
Yeah.
So, if your values kind of line up with his values, then you know what, I probably care about similar things.
Yep.
So if Matt's telling me, you know what, I'm not for everyone, but if you really like quality, if you really like chasing after like that 1%, in terms of just like having the best stuff in your garage, maybe my process is for you. Maybe my products are good for you, and that's what happened. I fell in love with what he had curated, and when we started our garage design and this whole journey with Kodawari, I'm like, I knew that I wanted to make his products and his procedures our baseline, and we kind of just tweak it as we go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you know, um, it definitely looks awesome, and I'm sure extremely enjoyable workspace to work in, and all the tools and all that kind of stuff. One thing that's super nice that I would like to do at some point is like I know you guys have the Sonic MSS Plus cabinets. Do you have
Hmm.
like all of like the do you have the whole tool set where it's like all in the like foam organizers and stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So like that's something that I'm working towards doing in my new toolbox that I got because I think like that level of organization, like not only does it just look really nice, but it increases your efficiency because you're not looking for stuff, and it makes your accountability for like your tools and stuff like so much easier because it's clear like, hey, this is missing,
Yeah.
you know. So and that actually kind of like speaks to I know when we had kind of previously talked, I talked a little bit about like 5S, which is like a it's an organization system that was actually developed kind of as part of like Toyota's production system. And you know, that's like a big part of it is, you know, everything kind of has a place. um and I think that just makes a huge difference in a workspace.
Yeah, no, I would love to learn more about this system because it's something that we're, like our ethos, our passion is really chasing excellence, really chasing after what it means to have success in whatever you're doing, whether it's detailing, whether it's content creation, whether it's building relationships. But like, what are some core principles that you should try and align yourself with? And organization is one, and having the discipline to stick with that organization is also a big one. So
Yeah.
we've had a lot of fun at work where if someone doesn't put a tool back in its socket, if we don't do something that we agreed on as a team, you're doing burpees, you're doing 25 burpees.
That'll teach them
So
fast.
yeah, so it's I'm always like running around the shop and keeping tabs on the guys here and there, because I'm like, it's not about me trying to grill the guys about not doing this, but I'm like, we're trying to do it as a team, and we understand that we have to keep each other accountable if we're gonna get there. And it's
Yeah.
more of like supporting and not kind of putting each other down, saying like, "Oh, you forgot," because we all make mistakes, right? But knowing where things go and having a process and sticking to it and being disciplined about it is definitely, it's taken a whole year. We're still working towards it, because even something as simple as recycling, a lot of automotive shops don't recycle. A lot of automotive shops create a lot of waste, and there's a
Yeah,
lot of
and that's a
negativity
shame.
associated with that. And something that we take pride with Kodawari is we recycle all our batteries, we recycle all our cardboard, like we take our time to go to the local recycling plant to dispose of it, because even at our property there's only a garbage bin. The landlord's not paying for a recycling bin. But we're taking company time, we're taking time out of our own day that we could be doing other things to actually wait in line at the recycling bin to recycle aerosol cans properly, to recycle cardboard properly. And those values are important to us because we want to look at really bringing you know our values as individuals and as a collective into our brand and into how we run our business.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean sustainability is important. I mean, we only got one earth and we all got to live on it.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So,
that's big.
yeah, that's awesome. We're fortunate to have recycling here, so it's easy.
Yeah, even with compost, we kind of freeze it in the fridge over the week, and then every Monday we bring it home and kind of compost at our house, because um yeah, they come every week for that. So yeah, even getting my guys, like when they go out to buy takeout food, I was like, guys, rinse out your containers, recycle the container, put the food in the compost. Like, that's important to me. We have to be very considerate of how we go about our day-to-day things, and building that discipline on the very mundane, very boring things that people don't think have a lot of impact. Actually, it actually does. And I've come to appreciate how all the little things add up to the bigger picture. And having a culture of that it's hard at first, but we're starting to see the fruits of it. It's slow, but it's bearing fruit slowly.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, I mean, if you create a culture of accountability and you start, that's going to start to build habit. And then once it becomes habit, like it's just second nature. You don't even have to think about it anymore. You just do it.
Yeah,
So that's awesome that you guys are doing that.
yeah. We want to start sharing that a little bit more on our website and through our content. Is like, this culture, our mindset is something that's very authentic and unique to us, and we want to connect with people who share the same values.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that appeals to. I mean, luckily, that's kind of as a society, we our mindset has shifted more towards that, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So Austin, I know for your 9 to 5, you're like a cost analysis,
Yeah,
or sorry, um,
yeah, I'm a cost analyst for the U.S. Army.
that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah,
And your mom was an accountant, and she took pride in kind of like teaching you and your siblings how to understand the core principles of how finances affects you know or affects or is an important part of learning how to navigate in the world. Do you do you see yourself looking at the detailing process or being a detailer from a numbers perspective at all, or um because I know
oh,
you mentioned you enjoy the process and efficiency and all that kind of stuff, so
right.
does that have a part to play in it? Do you
It
find?
it does a little bit in terms of you know, I mean, one thing that I'm big on is like when I'm looking at like chemicals and like stuff like that. Like I want stuff that is a good value. Like, and sometimes that doesn't always mean that it's exactly the best, but I want something that provides really good performance at a good price, you know? So like I think like P&S has a lot of products that are like really good value products. Like Breakbuster, that's awesome, I mean, heck, it cleans your tires and it cleans your wheels. And since I've started using it, like my Sonax Full Effect wheel cleaner, which is like the iron reactive wheel cleaner, I rarely ever need it, you know? And I think like the Adams car shampoo is a great product. It's, I think, very cost effective for what it does. So like that's something that's important to me. And then especially like if you're a business, that's something that has to be important to you because you know that's something that you can pass on to your customer where you can assure them like, hey, I'm providing you a great service, we're using great products, but it's also at a price that you can afford, you know and so that's something that's always kind of important to me. um, and that kind of flows through into a lot of my life. I'm always looking for value. I don't want cheap junk, but I want something that provides great value for the money.
Hmm.
And sometimes that does happen to be the best product too.
Yeah, I think with detailing, you have to be open minded and very flexible and willing to adapt to all the different situations. So sometimes, yeah, sometimes you need the best product in the world for that specific situation, but sometimes you don't, right? Maybe you just
Yeah,
need uh, a brake buster that can do your wheels and tires in one shot, that gets it to the result that you're looking for. So it's definitely an area that we're exploring a lot and trying to really find what works for us, especially we live in a different climate compared to yourself and Matt, right? So having to deal with harsh winters and salt,
yeah,
we're trying to take um, his products and explore a little bit on our own. But
yeah.
what other products do you find yourself reaching for consistently, when you're working through detailing projects?
Yeah, so I mean, I find that I use Breakbuster all the time. The Adams car shampoo is awesome. I really like McGuire's hyper dressing a lot. especially like diluted because I don't really like a like shiny finish. O&R it is like a super awesome, super versatile product. I mean, like you can do rinseless washes. You can dilute it to clean your windows. You can clean your interior with it. Like almost anything you can imagine, you can do with O&R. Clay
You can
lube.
you've cleaned interior with Olenar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's there. So like, there's all kinds of dilution ratios for O&R where you can use it for like all kinds of different stuff, and it's a great, super versatile product. When we were building our house, we were living in an apartment complex, so like I didn't have access to like running water, like and like a place to wash my car, and I was having to do it like out in the sun and stuff. Trust me, for someone who likes to keep their car clean, this was like the worst time of my life. And so I started searching for like, God, I have to have something that I can use to keep my vehicles clean. And so I kind of like started reading about O&R, and I think Matt, has experimented with it some and whatever. And Ivan LaCroix, I don't know if you know who he is, but he used to be like the um, one of the main guys at Optimum, and I think he's retired since. But he had a lot of really great videos online, and I started kind of watching that stuff, and then I joined like their Facebook group and started reading like all these guys just like talking about like, yeah, I use O&R for this, that, and the other. I mean, there's guys that put O&R in their steam cleaner to keep it from clogging up with like calcification from water. Uh, and
Really?
yeah, so I started using it, and I found like, man, I can do like almost everything with this product, and that was nice for the situation I was in. Where like I didn't have a lot of space to store products, and I was having to wash my car like in a freaking parking lot. Um, and I don't find that I use it as much now that I have like a nice indoor wash bay and all that kind of stuff to like wash in. But yeah, it definitely works well for a bunch of different stuff. I've got a spreadsheet that has like some of those different like dilutions and stuff that I'll send to you.
Oh man, yeah, you're gonna have to send that to me because
Yeah,
just hearing you talk about that situation, I don't know about all over the world, everyone's living in different living arrangements. In Toronto, in the GTA, their housing is very expensive, very expensive, and a lot of people are finding themselves living in townhouse condominiums, condos in general. So you don't always have like a proper wash bay, but sometimes guys are washing their cars in underground parking lot. Sometimes they're going to a coin op, right? So
yep,
I would love to kind of share these tips and tricks to maybe help people who are from the city who don't have like a sweet wash bay or are forced to wash in a parking lot. Like what can they do to kind of navigate that? But we haven't really used O&R that much, to be honest, and I know it's kind of been itching me that I know we haven't really unlocked the potential of what it could do.
yeah,
But after hearing you kind of talk about it, I think I'm very excited to kind of explore it with my team and hopefully create some content that can show people, hey, you know what? Um, Maybe you're in the renovation stage that you don't have your wash bay, or maybe you live in a condo that you don't have like access to like a hose and water. Maybe this is the a really good solution for that. And how can we put together a package that allows for you to easily maintain your vehicles in a situation like that?
yeah. Well, and it's also nice too for like with you guys being in Canada, it's a colder climate, so like in the winter, like I mean, even if you do have running water and stuff, washing your car outside is either impossible or would suck.
Yeah.
And so like O&R is nice because like if you have a garage, you could just pull the car in the garage and wash your whole car inside the garage. Like regardless of if you have, a floor drain or Swiss tracks or any of that kind of stuff, like it doesn't matter. So that is really nice too.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to kind of explore that because yeah, we have winter coming up. Winter's coming, and I know there's so many people in the city that drive their sports cars or drive the cars that they love all winter long, and and having a process that helps you kind of navigate that on the weekends or something is something that I think a lot of people are waiting for. So
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah, yeah. You might could put some like packages together for your customers and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, we've even talked to Matt, like working with him and testing out like products using our climate. Right? He's like, maybe we can get you guys to trial some of the stuff out because you guys are a business and you guys have a different climate, so we can partner up with him and maybe explore and kind of learn things together. So that's just really cool about being in a community like this. It's just enjoying these things. But I know you know Lex Garage as well, right?
yeah, yeah. Alex
How
is a great dude.
how did you get to connect with Alex?
So I think we'd kind of like run across each other a little bit, like in the Obsessed Garage Facebook page. But and then like when I joined Instagram, he was like really one of the first people that I kind of connected with, and just like a super nice guy. And honestly, like I just started my Instagram just literally as kind of like a way for me to like channel my automotive passion. Just like, I didn't care if anybody ever saw it. It didn't matter, I just wanted somewhere to like document what I was doing, and and kind of a way to keep me accountable and like keep momentum going on projects and stuff, and so I connected with him, and he kind of like gave me some pointers and stuff like that, and really kind of helped me like build my confidence to like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And yeah, so shout out to Alex. I mean, that was, you know big time. And I feel like he's done that for a lot of people, and it's and he's grown a lot now. He's with Viper Garage or Viper Chair and all that kind of stuff. So like, that's awesome, and it's good to see that karma comes around and helps people that are putting out positive energy into the world.
Yeah, no, Alex is awesome. I really enjoyed connecting with him and doing a podcast with him, and I got to really see who he is as a person. And he's just like you said, super generous, really open to helping anyone that asks a question. He's always there, always willing to give first before he asks. And I generally, if you take care of people, things kind of tend to work out. So
I
it's cool
agree.
that a lot of our values kind of aligned, and being able to connect with you guys is definitely something that makes me so happy, and I'm so excited for all the cool projects that we could um, work on together, or enjoy
Yeah.
this passion together as friends, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. It's awesome to find like other like-minded individuals who have the same passions as you and stuff. And like, it's cool because like I consider you, I consider Alex like my friends. And even though we've never met in person and you're halfway across the world, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just like you go to a meet and you find someone who has like a similar car, and you guys have that shared interest in a similar car, and it's like an icebreaker, and you can kind of start talking about your passion, and it's almost like you guys have been friends for so long because you guys have both gravitated to that car for maybe similar reasons, maybe sometimes not, but a lot of times, yeah, these cars speak to us, these interests and hobbies speak to us because of who we are and our interests. So um, yeah, it's super easy, and it's almost effortless sometimes when you meet someone with um, that kind of alignment.
I agree. And to me, like this is my favorite part about cars and car culture and the car scene, if you will, is like I love the people, man. That's what it's all about. Like the cars are just a conduit
Yeah.
for building relationships and meeting people. Like I have some of my best friends in the whole world that I would never have known if it wasn't for cars. Like one of my best friends is a 50-year-old Filipino guy. Like how on earth would we even meet? But like he's one of my best friends, and so it's interesting, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the people and the relationships, and like I'm a people person, and I love people, and so that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. from from the time I started this journey with cars, a lot of my close friends that are now family are because of the cars. And the reason why some of the builds that I want to continue building with Kodawari from maybe like 5 6 years ago is because they represent a time of when these friendships and these relationships were forged. So I want to kind of almost honor that that time and the relationships I was able to build because of this car and this build. That's definitely a big part of that.
Yeah. No, I agree totally.
Okay, we're gonna jump into a quick break and then we'll be right back. All right, and we're back from the break. So let's jump into, okay. So when we were planning out this conversation, Austin, you told me you had a whole huge laundry list of vehicles that you've owned. Okay. Uh, Sherry always kills me and busts my balls saying that you have too many cars. I'm like, I've only owned like 7 8 cars. Okay. Now I have a reason. I can point. Look at Austin. He's had 44 cars. So let's run through this. Um, Out of the 44, you've had 9 BMWs, 7 Datsuns, 8 Porsches, and those are like the biggest chunks of the pie, right? So out of those cars, what are the most memorable builds to you?
Yeah, so it's got to start with probably my favorite car. Just the most fun car that I've ever owned was probably the BMW Z4M Coupe. Um, it was a 2007 black sapphire metallic, black extended leather package with Madeira wood, 6-speed manual. It's got the S54 from the E46 M3 in it, and that car was just awesome, raw, fun. The S54 is, I mean, like it's won so many awards, like awards, 10 best engines, like whatever, multiple times. And that thing is a screamer, man. Like, it was so much fun to just get in the car and just wring its neck and like let it scream all the way up to, like 8,000 RPM or whatever it is. And yeah, that car definitely was the most fun. And I kind of have like a thing for sort of unique and rare cars. Like that makes me want it even more. And so that car was one of 1,815 built for the US and one of two built in the exact spec.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
So that car, you know, I didn't realize that they had the same motor as the E46 M3s. Um, what characteristics would you kind of say makes it different from the E46? Because everyone knows the E46 M3,
Right.
right? Like what?
So the E46 to me was slightly more compromised than the Z4M because it was a bigger car. It was a four seater. Um, it weighs a little more, and it's a little softer of a car because it's really made to be the everyday supercar. So like you know you can go out, you can beat on it on a back road, you can take it to the track, and then you can drive your kid to school in it, and like it'll do all of those things really well. Where the Z4M was a little more focused as an actual sports car. So it's two seater. It it weighs a little less. I think 200 or 300 pounds less than an E46 M3. It has a shorter wheelbase, um, and it's just a little sharper. It has a quicker steering rack, and so it just was more uh, focused on being a sports car, not a an everyday car. And that's part of really what I really enjoyed about it because it kind of took the most enjoyable qualities of the E46 to me and then turned it up. Um, and it's just a super enjoyable car to drive, man. It handles incredibly, and that S54 motor just sings.
Like, like having you describe, because like a lot of people are always kind of like making fun of, or not making fun, but they're kind of poking holes in like these M3s and M4s. Like it's not a true sports car, right? Like it's got to make some compromises because it's got to be for, yeah, taking it to the track on the weekends and being able to throw your son in it and take him to school, which is a beautiful thing. But as car enthusiasts, if you want to take that up a little notch and you want to take that motor and you put it in a chassis that was a little bit more focused, um, what would that be like? And it's funny because I look at the Z4, and back when I was a little kid, when we started collecting diecasts, my mom, she picked out her favorite because it was like we started off with me and my brother buying diecasts, and then eventually it became like my dad would pick one, my mom would pick one, and she picked out a Z4 M, and I don't know what generation they were,
Yeah.
or it was. It was probably one of the first generation Z4s. How many have there been? Do you
So
know?
I think the Z4 is on its third generation
Okay,
now. So like the Z4M was the first generation of the Z4, and you had the Z3 before that.
okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about the current Z4 and the Supras?
I like it. I'm not in love with the direction that BMW is going. Um, because they are, and I think you alluded to this a little bit on one of your podcasts where you guys were kind of like talking about cars and stuff and talking to the Supra and slash the Z4, because they were co-developed. Um, I, the cars are becoming less driver focused. You have electronic steering now. The steering is not as direct, and it doesn't have the same feedback, that tactile feel that you get in the older BMW, especially M cars. Uh, and it's a little bit of a softer car, I think. But the engine is amazing. It's an absolute missile. If you want something that could be like a highway pull, like
Yeah.
super fast car to go out and like race or whatever, yeah, like that would, and like that's a fun thing. But I enjoy more like the driver's cars. So I like naturally aspirated cars typically, and I like cars that have really great feedback and they're just a lot of fun to drive. Um, so I think it's an interesting car, but in my personal opinion, I think they're moving in the wrong direction. Um, I'd take a Z4M coupe all day, every day.
Okay, you're gonna help me find one. All right,
Yeah,
let's hunt one down.
let's do it. The coupes are harder to find. The roadsters are a little easier and cheaper, but they
Yeah,
don't look as cool.
yeah.
So,
No,
and they're not as stiff.
yeah, the coupes are, you gotta try it for the coupes. Although I love the convertible aspect,
Yeah,
like just, man, just enjoying the S2000 has really opened my eyes to like, holy smokes, like there's a car for every mood, every day, every season of your life, and uh, an open top convertible is is definitely something to be experienced, but having the rigidity and the looks of a hardtop coupe is also really important.
yeah. It's funny too that like you love the S2000 so much. The Z4M coupe always reminded me of the S2000 with the spoon hardtop. How it has like that fastback kind of design, and then it has like a little bit of like a ducktail kind of like spoiler built in.
Yep.
That I've always thought like that those two designs like had a lot in common.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. No. Okay. I'm gonna. It's funny when you were talking about the Z4M. I was thinking of like, man, I wonder if any Japanese tuners have made aero and body kits for that car. That would be pretty cool to modify. Because I love when these companies take European cars, like the Japanese companies take to European cars, and they modify and add their own flair to it.
Yeah, there was a guy back when I had my car that he had a black one that had like some black SSR, like the deep dish, like 5-spoke wheels that just looked so good on there. Like way better than any of like the European offerings. It just looked amazing. So, and that's the one thing I regret. I never got to put wheels on that car because all the wheels that I liked for it were just outrageously expensive, and I just couldn't afford it at the time. I was like in college and stuff, um, but I had H&R coilovers, RPI intake. I had a MagnaFlow exhaust on it that really sounded pretty nice. And a short shifter. I had you gotta on those cars like the clutch stop is like the clutch throw is like way too long, and so like the first thing you got to do is go in there and rip that thing out and put a different clutch stop in there, and that feels so much better. So just a lot of like little stuff to incrementally improve the car because I didn't want to change the character of the car. I just wanted to improve it.
Yeah, because you were touching on something earlier, saying how like the new Z4s, they're fast as hell, but you lose a little bit of that tactile feel, the feedback, that engagement, and switching to a company and a brand that is all about that. And I think that's the reason why a lot of enthusiasts are gravitating toward the Porsche brand and how they've exploded in popularity, right? Uh, Talk to me about the Cayman S.
Yeah, yeah. So that's got to be like my second favorite car, and objectively a much better car than the Z4. But yeah, a great car, super balanced. I mean, like the best handling car I've ever driven in my life, bar none. It just has this way of inspiring this confidence in you, where you feel like you're Walter Roll or something. Like you can just go out there and just freaking chuck this thing into the corners, and it's gonna stick, and it's gonna pull you right through it, and you're gonna have this huge smile on your face. And the steering is super direct. I mean, you feel like this, like you're part of the car. You don't feel like you're driving the car. You feel like you're connected to the car, and just an absolutely amazing car. And you're right, like Porsche, their whole design and engineering ethos is around like performance and driving engagement first before anything else. Like that's number one. And I love that, and I think that's why I've always been drawn to the Porsche brand. Other than obviously my roots are based in that too, but just a great company in what they do and the products that they create. And man, that car was so awesome, and I sold it when we were deciding to build our house because I couldn't bear to park it in a parking lot, and and I didn't want to pay to store it and stuff, and so I'd had it for a while, and I just decided it's time to move on, and so I sold it, and recently the guy I sold it to posted it up for sale on the PCA classifieds, and I thought about it for a second, trying to reach out and get it back, but I decided, I better just embark on a new journey instead of going back to an old one.
Was it a 3.6 in the
So
Cayman S?
that car is a 3.4 liter. Yeah, so it's a 3.4 liter. So that in that generation, the 987 generation, the Cayman and the Boxster were actually like pretty different cars. People always like to say that the Cayman is like just a Boxster with a hardtop, and now that's actually pretty true with the new 718 generation. But with the first generation, it really wasn't true. The car actually had more 911 parts on it than it did Boxster parts. So it has the bigger 3.4 versus the 3.2 in the Boxster S. And it has a 6-speed manual transmission. My particular car was a pretty unique car. The the original owner ordered it from Century Porsche in Huntsville, and he spec'd the car with in Arctic silver, black interior. He wanted sport seats, the bi-xenon lights, the sport shifter, so like the factory Porsche short throw shifter.
Yep.
He did not want the badging on the back, so it has the model designation delete, and then the best part was the car had the Porsche carbon ceramic brake system.
Wow. Yeah. No. That's what really caught my eye when I was looking through your list. I was like, wait, carbon ceramics on a Cayman S? Like, I
Yeah,
didn't even know that was.
most people didn't know that that was even possible, and it's extremely rare because it's such an expensive option that like almost nobody ordered it. Um, and it's funny too because nobody ever thought my car was an S either because it didn't have the badging
Oh.
on the back. And then they'd be like, "Did you put these carbon ceramics on there?" And I was like, "No, it came this way, man. Like this was just a really unique car." So the guy, I love the way that the guy ordered the car. It's like how I would have ordered it because it was all like driver focused stuff. Like
Yeah.
he wanted. The only thing I wish he would have got that he didn't was PASM, the active suspension management. That would have been kind of nice, but you don't necessarily need it. But yeah, the PCCB brake system is amazing, but I'll tell you, it's extremely nerve wracking because like you hear like first of all, a rotor's like 5 grand, and like if you bang a wheel into it, you could crack the rotor.
Holy. So like you
So
have to be very particular where you take the car to get serviced.
I never would take the car anywhere to let anybody touch the wheels. Like if I needed to get tires installed, I would put the car on jack stands in my garage and take the wheels because you go to these tire places and it's just like you can't go in there and say like, by the way, if you bang my rotor with a wheel and crack it, you're gonna owe me 5 grand. They're gonna be like, no way.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
mean rotors aren't $5,000? Like, well, these are. Um, yeah, so that car just was like a super unique spec and really awesome. And then I kind of decided that I wanted to like kind of put my own touches on the car. So I was very inspired by the 987.2 generation Cayman R. I just thought like that was basically kind of like what we talked about earlier. It was like Porsche is one of the only companies where like my idea of like what if the designers and the engineers had like free reign to do whatever they wanted without
Yeah.
any like
Yeah.
handcuffs. Porsche does that, like they basically say like, yeah, go ahead, do it. And so like for that generation car, since there wasn't a GT4 or a GT4 RS, the R was that car. And so like everything that I did was inspired by like, okay, I want the car to be more Cayman R like. So I painted the mirrors and the side intake grills, and the little like fog light surrounds and stuff black. I got like the Porsche script decals that went down like the rocker panels. I got OZ, some really lightweight OZ racing wheels in like 18 by 10, and I don't remember what the front side, like 18 by 8.5 or something like that. And I got some Hankook RS4 like 200 treadwear autocross tires. And like I had my suspension set up for a lot of like negative camber. Like basically, I used the Cayman R uh, alignment specs, and I put GT3 brake ducts on it. Um, I had like the IPD intake plenum and just some different stuff. Before I sold the car, my plan was kind of the next thing was I was going to put some headers on it and do a Softronic tune. I actually did all of that on my buddy Ken's car, and that car was an absolute animal. I mean, it just ripped. It felt so raw and was so fun. Like it was kind of like I kind of thought like this must be what like a GT car feels like, except I'm sure better.
I just saw the 987. Wait, so it only the R's only came in that generation, right?
Yeah, so the 987.2, which was like the facelift version of the
Yeah.
987, they only made them I think in like '08 and '09.
And did they only come in that green color?
No, so you could get them in black, green. I think it's called like signal green or something like that. And then I feel like maybe you could get them in like white and maybe silver, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't even know that car existed until this year, and funny enough, I went to like a Cars and Coffee meet a couple months ago, and I saw one in the flesh for the first time, and I was like, whoa, this thing is freaking sick.
Yeah, I love it. The 987.2 generation cars I think are like the best looking Caymans because they're just like they have that really sleek, sexy silhouette. But they updated the headlights and the tail lights and a couple other little things from the 987.1 that just make it look like slightly more modern and like sleeker. And I love that generation. That's a car that I would love to own.
What are they sitting around right now? Do you know?
I don't even know since the market's just like exploded. Who knows? Probably crazy money. They they were they never really depreciated a whole lot,
Yeah, those
honestly.
cars like that, they just
Yeah. If you want a sound investment in a car, because like cars are typically not investments. If you want a sound investment in a car, buy special Porsches. So like anybody that needs some advice, there you go. Just go buy special Porsche cars because they just don't really depreciate. And then even if they do a little bit, if you hold on to it long term, it appreciates at probably a much better rate than the stock market.
yeah. And if you like take care of it and you clean it and you make sure that it's in good shape, that only adds to that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Man, so if we're already talking about the Cayman R, well,
We
the
got to
natural
step it up.
progression is talking about the GT4 RS,
That's right.
right?
Yep.
What do you think, man? Like,
Amazing. I honestly never thought this day would come because Porsche has always kind of had this history of like hamstringing their models that are technically not supposed to be as good as the 911.
yeah,
But like just mid-engine, like it's a better platform than the 911 is, just naturally, And so I always thought that the GT4 RS just would never happen because like it would be a better car than any 911 ever made, GT3 RS or not. And so, when they did the GT4, like I was surprised and I was like, man, that is an awesome car. I also totally wish I could have bought one back when the first GT4 came out because, they were like in the 80s and now they're in the hundreds. Uh, but, uh, but yeah, just man, the GT4 RS is just going to take it to a whole new level. I can't even imagine how awesome the Cayman that I had was, and then now we're like two generations newer, but also it's a full up RS car, and it's got everything. It's got the big, what is it like a 4.0 uh, or 4.0 flat six.
yeah,
Manual transmission. You can get the PDK. PDK is cool. Like I don't know if you've driven one, but it's actually a lot of fun.
yeah.
If
No,
it,
a friend of ours that we were serving his GT3 RS, and I had never experienced Porsche's PDK before, and I drove his GT3 RS, and I can't even describe it. Like
It's like a video game. It doesn't even feel
it's
real.
yeah, and the way it puts down the power, like I haven't driven a lot of Porsches, so like having all that weight in the rear, having that PDK, it was like Gran Turismo. It was like
Yeah.
growing up playing Gran Turismo, all those hours spent with the paddle shifters and
Yep.
feeling it and hearing it in person. Oh man, I can't even. Yeah, I can't even describe that.
It's amazing, and the amazing thing about it is like the programming is so good that it knows what you want to do before you know. So like you're coming out of a corner, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, like let's go down into third gear and rocket you out of this corner, you know, before your brain's even really had time to process that.
But yeah, the GT4 RS, you hear Andreas Porninger saying this is the best car we've ever built,
It's got to be. Why wouldn't it
right?
be? I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. The fact that they finally said, like, okay, like, let's take the shackles off and let's let this thing really shine. It if you can get an allocation for one, I would highly suggest anyone who can reasonably afford it go do it, because that car is one probably never really going to be made again, because like we're coming into this era where ice is dying,
Yeah.
right? And we're going towards electrification. So like the GT4 RS, in my opinion, it's going to probably end up being considered the greatest driver's car of all time, bar none, and they're probably going to be worth millions of dollars one day. So,
Oh my god, that's that's a lot to take in, man. That's a lot to
yeah,
take in, and that's I guess I'm selling all my Hondas.
I know.
I'm gathering all my peanuts. I'm gonna remortgage this house, and we're I'm gonna have to find a way to explain to Sherry the investment. I'm like, did you hear what Austin said in the podcast? You know, you edited this podcast. He's like, this is could possibly be the greatest driver's car ever made, and I believe it. I really
Yeah,
do. Just getting a taste of the passion, just watching Andreas Porninger take this GT department from what it is and really showcasing what it means to build true enthusiast cars is incredible.
it is, man. There's just, in my opinion, there's nobody out there that's doing it better. You
Yeah.
know, like if you just want the best driver's car, Porsche's doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so
Man.
but unfortunately, we can't all afford that. So
Yeah.
one
But
day,
we uh we know cars that are a little bit more accessible, right?
yep.
Talk to me about your upcoming edition
Yeah.
and your
So
excitement for that.
uh, you heard it here first on the on KodaCast. Graner's Garage will be adding a new member to the fleet. We've got a 2022 GR86 premium in Trueno blue, 6-speed manual, ordered. So still wondering when that's going to come in, but hopefully sooner than later. Yeah, man, I'm excited about it because I think that it it's a car built in the same ethos and based on the same principles as a car like the Cayman or like a Porsche. And then it's got the flat motor in it. It's got a super low center of gravity, so like it shares some kind of similar even design components. But it's a lightweight car. It weighs. I think I actually read yesterday a guy weighed one at the alignment shop, and it was 2,740 pounds. So it's even lighter than they're saying it is. And it's all about having fun. It's all about the feel, the engagement, uh, precision handling, like, and that appeals to me a lot. And it's not a super fast car, but I think that what they did with the FA24, they gave it a bump in power. They kind of fixed the torque curve a little bit, and I think it's got some more potential to be unlocked. And it's going to be a quick enough car to have a lot of fun. And I'm excited to take that and then build upon it, because I feel like this is like the ultimate tuner car. You know, I mean, and especially because it looks like a lot of the parts from the first gen are going to carry over, suspension, brake wise, stuff like that. So yeah, I just think it's going to be a lot of fun to build and play with.
Yeah, that the original first gen FRS and BRZ, like that was just a wonderful, wonderful example of what a modern day sports car could be. And being accessible price wise, having the aftermarket support, the community, I think it's really paved the way to a lot of a lot of other companies coming out with more enthusiast cars. I think people in the industry have taken notice of how well these cars were received. Right? People are
Yep.
saying oh, people don't buy two doors anymore. People don't buy these kind of cars. They're only looking for SUVs and four doors. But build a platform that's actually, really good. Build a really good car, and people will buy it. People will get
Yep.
it, right?
I
And
I
and and
totally agree.
it's you no longer can use that excuse. It's just like a cop out, because maybe you didn't build a product that was compelling enough.
Well, most of the sports cars they're building these days aren't true sports cars. It's like they give it a sporty looking body and they give it some kind. They turn up the boost a little bit and they say, okay, here's a sports car. It's like, yeah, but the steering feedback still sucks. It's still soft. It's not that fun. It's not that engaging. Sports cars aren't about the performance numbers on the paper, in my opinion. It's about the feel and the connection you make between the driver and the car and like the smile that it puts on your face.
Yep, I've only begun to really really understand that with the NSX. It's
Yeah.
it's a car that's not particularly fast, but every single time I get in that car, the sensation of speed, how connected I feel, the my craving for wanting to go back into it, it's unreal. And I say it's kind of hard to explain to someone who doesn't experience it like that. Sometimes it's explained to Sherry how much, because it's we sometimes get into these arguments where we have the Type R, right? It's a family car.
Yep.
We can throw Anderson and Sherry, and she's like, "Why don't you why don't you like cruising with us in that car?" And I'm like, "I love that car. That Type R is amazing, and it serves a purpose, and it's so wonderful in every single way, and I'm keeping it for the rest of my life." But at the same time, it's not an NSX, and there are there's
Let me,
just certain things that you can't replicate, and that sports car chassis, that driving experience is just, yeah, it's special.
let me ask you this question. So you've got the NSX, you've got the S2000, and you've got the Civic Type R, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So rank those three cars. Like which cars are you gonna go drive first?
NSX first.
Obviously the NSX.
Yeah, NSX first. um the S2000 second, and the Type R third.
That's what I thought. You know why? Because those are drivers' cars. Like and which one's the fastest? The Civic Type R, I'm sure,
Yeah, it blows the
probably
doors off
by
of
a
both of
long
them.
shot.
Yeah.
But it's just not. It's not the same. It's
Yeah.
not as. It's not. It doesn't have as singular of a focus.
And I always make that analogy with other people who don't understand, is like, you have an outfit for a certain day and a certain mood and a certain season that you're in, and the same thing kind of applies for us car enthusiasts, right? Like, yeah, no, when I'm dropping off Anderson at school, and when I'm going like grocery shopping, and we're going to IKEA and we're picking up furniture, the Type R does all of that in spades, like beautifully, masterfully, and it's a engineering marvel that they were able to put together a car. And I remember watching one of the press videos when they first released that car, and the engineer was like, "I wanted to create a car that you can drive forever and for all purposes," and they did that, because I when we were renovating the house, we've thrown in a 36-inch vanity into that car, and
Yeah.
it slammed the suspension in the rear, and I had the biggest smile on my face closing that hatch, knowing that, holy shit, like, this car makes me, it's an experience, and I can do this, right?
Yeah.
We've done recycling runs with like 8 9 recycling bags full of cardboard in that car, and I can come back and I can boot around a corner like a mid-engine sports car. But at the same time, it serves that purpose, and the NSX and the S2000 serve another purpose, right?
Yeah. All cars kind of are designed with a purpose in mind, and some cars are more compromised where they need to do a lot of things really well, but they're not. They're a jack of all trades, a master of none. And the Civic Type R is kind of that kind of car, and it does a wonderful job at that. Another example of that's like kind of like a GTI or a Golf R. Great cars at doing being everything to all people. But they will never match a car designed with a singular focus, you know?
Yeah, just seeing these companies kind of jump back onto that is really refreshing. And hearing you kind of talk about the GT4 RS is just like, man, how the getting an allocation for that is going to be one of the hardest things in this.
Yeah. If one can even be had anymore.
Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy. Um, but with the price that the GT, um, sorry, I'm
The
blanking.
GR86.
GR86,
Yeah.
because they're going to be roughly what are they MSRP?
Yeah, so I mean, I think they're starting in the US, like USD at 28, and that includes like delivery and everything. And then like a premium model is like 31.5. So to think that in this modern day and age where like cars are getting bigger, heavier, more tech laden, faster, and more expensive, that there's a car out there that's being built brand new with a warranty, you know, that it's lightweight, it's manual transmission. That's rare in itself. It has very direct steering. It's a great handling car. It's a great looking car, and like has a reasonable interior. It's not super luxurious, but it has a nice design to it, and it seems like it's going to hold up well. Eh, all of that for $30,000. Like, pinch me. I must be dreaming, right?
Yeah, no. When you put it that way, it's like, yeah, it's crazy. The interior is very, it's not bare bones, but it's got enough in the right places, and it's focused around your driving experience. But did the 400Z come up on your radar at all?
It did. So to be completely honest with you, before the GR86 like really got completely unveiled, the 400Z was like that was my next car. I was like, that's what I want. It has that super cool retro look. Like I love the fact that it looks pretty much like the silhouette is very like 240Z S30 chassis. The front end obviously is very inspired by a 240Z. And then the shape of the back is 240Z inspired, but the taillights obviously scream Z32 300ZX. Uh, and then, it is also, I think, a little heavier, but a reasonably lightweight car for today's era. And it's manual transmission and it's got a twin turbo V6. And, you're going to have all of that for 40,000 USD. Uh, that's a great car. Um, the only place where I was like slightly disappointed was that the underpinnings are still 370Z based, so like it's not a totally new car. Um, and then just the while it is relatively light, it's not very light. There had been kind of some rumors that it was going to be like 3,000 pounds, and if that had been the case, I mean, I probably would have been all over it. But I think it's going to be more in the 3,400 ish pound range. Uh, and then just 40 grand. I think that's a great price for it. But I think what I could build out of a GR86 for 30 grand plus another 10, I'll have a lot more fun.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's um, having that like that pillar of lightweight. That's obviously something that is very important, right? Like when I look at cars like the T50 and Gordon Murray and someone who has built a life in racing, and now he's out to create the best driver's car, the best driving experience, and that's his North Star, as opposed to a Nürburgring lap time, as opposed to horsepower numbers. No, none of that. His sole focus was to create the best driving platform ever. And he said they're based on three pillars: lightweight, naturally aspirated, manual transmission. And that's been so inspiring to see someone say that and do that and build a car around those core principles that the NSX build, we're taking it in that direction.
Yeah.
We're keeping it naturally aspirated. We're going super hand with the lightweight, right? Putting on like the carbon rebars, the Lexan glass, upgrading the ABS just to save like 15 pounds. And we're just getting started, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really exciting, and I can't wait to see what you do with the GR86. It's I know you were talking about some Tom's parts, and
Yeah.
that's gonna be dope.
Yeah, I love the look. Tom's just nailed it with like the OEM plus kind of look. Like it just looks amazing. Kind of gives it like that GT3 kind of inspired look, like they took the base car but then they just like spiced it up a little bit. And like honestly like a GT3, GT4, like that kind of like I've been doing a lot of studying like what Porsche does to take the regular 911 or the regular Cayman and then make it a GT car. And I want to apply those principles to the GR86 and build like a GT3 inspired kind of build. Like I want to make as much power as I can reasonably make while maintaining reliability but keeping it naturally aspirated. I want to improve the suspension. I want to improve the steering inputs and feedback. I want to, put lighter wheels and tires on it, bigger, better, lighter brakes, that kind of thing. So that's definitely like kind of the direction you're thinking with the NSX is like the same kind of thing that I want to go with on the GR86.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I was literally like, I was up at like 4 a.m. yesterday, when I was waking up a little bit earlier than I normally would, but I was like just ruminating on how our Kodawari builds could really stand out. And obviously, I'm so inspired by the GT department and Andreas Porninger. I'm inspired by T50 and what Gordon Murray has done with that. I was like, man, that's essentially what I want to do with the S2000 and the NSX.
Yeah,
Is like I want to make a GT3 version of it, reliable, accentuate the suspension, the lightweight, the feel, and keep it naturally aspirated. And I was looking at the GTRs and like the word GT and the NSX Rs and the Rs, and how to create like a custom badging and how I would create a nameplate, right?
yeah,
So all of that was floating through my head, but it's just like it just put a big smile on my face just thinking of the possibility of taking a base car, and a lot of us can't really afford GT cars, or it's hard to get
right.
an allocation for these vehicles. So like taking a base car and then putting your touch on it and building it to what you wish you could get in one of those dream models is part of the journey. It's part of the fun, right?
Yeah, I agree totally. What are some other like companies, and builds and stuff that you follow that kind of inspire you, like for people that are listening?
Singer is definitely one of them.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, Singer, like their execution, their attention to detail. That's that. One of the goals is definitely to get the founders of Singer to on a podcast and talk about their story, because I think listening, because we see them right now on this pedestal of being like world class, being like $1 million custom projects, but I'd love to kind of hear how it started, right?
Right.
Because it probably started just like every other legendary company in humble beginnings and it started with passion, right? So I love hearing those stories, and hopefully taking little Easter eggs and little value and little lessons learned and applying it to our own journey, and hopefully our audience can do the same.
Yeah.
So Singer's definitely one. Koenigsegg as a brand is another. What Christian has done with his cars and his small team is remarkable. So that's another OEM manufacturer that is really cool, right? Um, in terms of
Lotus is a big one for me. I
okay,
I
yeah,
think I've never owned a Lotus, but I would love to. But I love like their core focus is just on like lightweight and driving experience, you know. And they're kind of a smaller company.
yeah. No, I've definitely always kind of been uh, impressed by what they've done, and it's one of those things where the more you get into this whole world of automotive, the more you realize there's so much to take in, to absorb, and to learn.
Oh yeah,
But
you could keep
Lotus is
learning for the
definitely,
rest of your life and never learn it all.
yeah, man. That's Kodawari right there. So yeah, getting into a Lotus and learning more about that brand and what those cars offer in terms of driving experience is definitely on the bucket list.
Cool. So a couple other things that I follow that you would probably like, and probably I would think people listening would like, is MZR. So they're building like kind of like a Singer esque 240Z, and so you can follow them on Instagram and stuff, and like they're building some incredible bespoke cars, and just absolutely beautiful. And then obviously I love Singer. Gunther Works
Yep.
is another like big time like Porsche tuner. And then I really have been liking a lot of stuff from Built by Legends lately. They do a lot of like kind of that level of detail, but on like JDM cars. And man, they do some beautiful stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. That man, if you're seeing that level of detail on a JDM car, that's
Right
it
up
for
your
me.
alley.
That's like you just I'm gonna just go spend the rest of the day opening up that can of worms, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, Austin, I had so much fun. This was a great conversation, and it was so nice to finally be able to connect with you. But I think we should wrap it up and then
yeah,
plan for a round two.
sure. It was
But
a great
in
time.
terms of your handles, social media handles, where can people
Yeah.
find you? And
So you can find me at Graner's Garage, GRANERS Garage. And then I'm on Facebook, Austin Graner, and yeah, I'd love to connect with you guys and see what you're doing, and you can hopefully get inspired by some of the stuff I'm working on and pick my brain.
yeah, yeah, no, we'll be in touch, and I think we're gonna be doing some cool stuff together. You just keep that EF there, and I might have to make a trip.
Yeah,
Having you kind of talk about the story of where it started and your chapter of bringing it back and just understanding the history of Civics and Hondas and what it's meant. It's brought even more meaning into what that car represents.
yeah, yeah. It's a pretty neat car with a pretty neat history. So yeah, come on down. We'll vlog it and you can share it on your channel.
Let's let's do it, man. Okay, guys. Hope you guys enjoy this one, and we'll see you in the next one.